brakes checked on this hot rod chair here. Oh my gosh, everybody. Welcome to Mower Mike's garage. And no, this is not a lawnmower. What this is here is my hot rod 2001 Chevy Silverado with a 5.3 bored out to the 5.7 Lunati cam, but we're not going to get into all that today. Today we're going to talk brakes. So she's been squeaking and she needs a new set of brake pads. So I know you guys see me on a lot of lawnmower videos, but really I cut my teeth fixing old Chevy trucks. And I've done a lot of brake jobs, and I just want to show you the most efficient, quickest way to test your brakes, replace the pads, look at the rotors, and also bleed them. And it's just real easy. It'll save you $500–600 at the auto shop. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, the first thing you have to do when you replace brake pads is you got to get her up in the air. And the way I do it is that, as you see here, I've already jacked up the rear of the truck. Now, something you have to remember, safety first here in Mower Mike's garage. When you jack up the rear of a truck, you got to remember, when you put her in park, that's the rear wheel, so she can still slide forward or back. Also, your parking brakes. So you got to make sure to use wheel chocks underneath your front wheel. As you can see there, I've got some good old wheel chocks on there. So just please be safe. Use wheel chocks. Also, I like to start with the passenger side rear because we're going to talk about it in a while, but when you bleed your brakes, you want to start with the passenger side rear and slowly work your way forward. So I think we're ready to rock and roll. And what we're doing, we're going to zoom in here on this exciting disc brake and show you guys how it works and how to get her swapped over to some fresh pads and get rid of that annoying squeak. Before we get to the exciting part of actually changing out some fancy brake pads, how about we do a Mower Mike special on how a brake system actually works in your vehicle. So you're inside the Chevy Silverado and you got to slam on the brakes. You hit the brake pedal inside, it pushes a plunger which feeds into your brake booster. So you hit it in here, and within here is a diaphragm which essentially looks like a big dinner plate. And it's got vacuum running to the engine on one side, it's atmospheric pressure on the other. So by pulling this vacuum against that big diaphragm, it helps boost the pressure of that little plunger as you push on it. So it helps push more pressure into here. Now this guy here is your master cylinder. So this is what actually creates the brake pressure. Well, it creates the hydraulics, which forces down the brakes lines to put the pressure on your brake pads, which we'll show you in a minute. So you've got your super strong plunger, comes out of your brake booster, goes into your master cylinder, and there are a couple of valves in here, proportioning valves, that helps push down through your brake lines. You'll notice your brake lines are steel because you do not want your brake lines expanding. The key to brakes is pressure. You want pressure going into your calipers, which squeeze on your brakes. Now on Chevy Silverados, you've got to realize this master cylinder, if you have spongy brakes, same thing happened on my 94 Suburban. Spongy brakes, a lot of times it's just this master cylinder. These things are cheap. They're like 50 bucks at the auto store. This is a great thing to change while you're changing your brakes because you're going to bleed them anyways. All it is a bolt here, a bolt there. Unhook these two and just strap a new one on there, and then we'll show you how to bleed it. So again, spongy brakes, I would definitely replace your master cylinder. So with that, let's go on and move on underneath her skirt and look at some brake pads. All right, so I've moved around back of the Silverado, and so let's say in theory you've bashed down the brakes, which push the plunger through the brake booster, which pushes the super strong little plunger through the brake booster into your master cylinder, which supercharges a high pressure rush of hydraulic brake fluid down here. The pressurized fluid comes into here, which is your brake caliper. And what that does is got a piston on this side that pushes and it squeezes your brake pads on your rotor. So, and that's what stops you. So the most common thing that happens is, of course, your brake pads wear out. So let's look, if I can get look down here at these brake pads. Now, these brake pads here are totally shot. Usually you would have about a ½ inch brake pad left. This is the metal, that's what it's left of the brake pad. And what you'll see here is that it's got the little piece of metal there. What this is a wear indicator. So when you start hearing your brakes squeal, usually what is going on is that wear indicator is hitting your rotor, telling you, hey, George or Carl, it's time for a new set of brake pads. So do not ignore the squeal of a brake pads. So that's just a very simple term of how the brakes work. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started getting this thing apart. All right, so I'm gonna show you different ways to change out your brake pads, from the easiest way to do it, and then we'll get into more complex ways when you actually have to look at your rotors. Now, if your rotors are not pulsing and you think they're just fine, you don't see any abnormal wear, and you just wanna do the brake pads, let me show you how to do that first. So these brake pads are mounted in your caliper, and these caliper is mounted actually on a floating caliper, which means it's got some wiggle room to go back and forth, so it's on these pins. So the only thing you need to do is loosen this top one, which is, I've got a 12 millimeter right here, and then a 5/8. So you have to hold this little mounting bracket, little pin thing right there, and just loosen up the top one. And then we're gonna go ahead and take the bottom one all the way out, and I've already got it loosened up. Now, what we're gonna do, these Chevys are super cool. You can't do this on other vehicles that I know of, but you can go ahead and just pry the caliper open. Look at that. So when you pull it up, and then if you're right here, you can see that the brake pads are right here. So if you just want to change out the brake pads like super quick, you can just pull them out of here and just slide in your new ones. All right, gang, so once you've got your brake pads pulled off now, and you want to slide in your new fancy brake pads, I got these Duralast brake pads here. You've got to press back this caliper, or I don't know, the piston here, because without that, you're not gonna be able to fit the brake pads in there, because we gotta have new space because the brake pads are actually thicker than the old ones. So, and this is run by hydraulics. So what I've got here is a little caliper vise thingy. You can use a lot of different seat clamps or big pliers, but I like using this. It's purpose made and it makes the job easier. As you can see, you just go ahead and it's built. Let's see if I can do it right. It's built so what you're gonna do, you're just gonna press that caliper back, the piston back in the caliper. Look at that. And you just turn it until, yeah, she goes back in there. Now I'm gonna have to get a wrench to turn it a little tighter, but you'll see how it goes. Now another option, you know, if you don't have that, let's see if we take this guy out of here, because you're gonna have to push this thing back. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts, and you sure can't do it with your hands. Now, if you have a giant set of pliers like these guys here, and you just wanna go ahead and put some force on it, let's see if we can do it. You see that? It's starting to go in a little bit, but it takes a lot of force. Ugh. So, then once it's pushed back, we can go ahead and slide those new ones on there. I've got it loosened up. As you can see, we're going ahead and turn it, and it's pushing that, what it's doing is pushing that piston back up in there. That way we're gonna have new room for our new thicker pads. Now, I've done this with all sorts of different vices and clamps and pliers, and then you'll feel it bottom out. But I tell you what, just go buy the $10 tool. I'll put a link. As you can see now, that piston is pushed all the way back in, which leaves lots of nice room for our new brake pads. So, new brake pads. Now I've got these Duralast brake pads, and what you want to do on the back end of them before you install them to prevent squeaking, you get this little brake pad grease stuff here, and just give it a little squirt on the back. Just a little lube. A little lube really makes a difference in life. So you just want to squeeze a little on there. And then once you get it on there, then literally, guys, it's this easy. You just slide it back into the old spacers, the old piece of the metal there. Look at that. Slide that guy on there. Take your other guy, slide it on there. Let's see if I can get it lined up correctly. And I'm not showing you, but it is always a good idea to get some a brake cleaner and give it a good shot of brake cleaner to clean all this stuff out. Whatever you do, do not use compressed air because you do not want to inhale this stuff. I don't want my viewers dying. And then you just kind of you slide that caliper back on there, and if you pressed it in enough, which obviously I have not, it should go right in there. You've got to realize these brake pads are a lot thicker than the old ones that we took off. So let's see if I can get a little more pressure on these pads. Squeeze them in. Come on, baby. For the camera. Shoot. There they go. And then all you do is you put your bolt back in here. You got to get it slide in right. There you go. Let's see if I can find my bolt. Come on. All right, and then your caliper mounting bolt. And what you do, now these are, on these Chevys, are 31 foot-pounds. So you really want to torque your bolts on your brakes because you don't want to go sliding off the road. So all you do is you torque this to 31, and when you hold that, just like before, and you're good to go if you just want to do the minimal brake pads to get rid of the squeaking. Now, I'm gonna walk you through, now if you want, you can totally turn this off, but I'm gonna walk through, if you wanna go the extra mile and look into these caliper pins here, because a lot of times these pins, they get stuck, they get rusty, they get nasty. So I like to go ahead and put new pins on. So in order to do that, you go ahead and you take this caliper all the way off, and it's the same method we did before. You just undo both bolts and it just slides off. And just go ahead and put it up on here in leaf spring. If you're a man, you got a truck, bam, bam. Now from here, you go ahead and you just pop off these plastic deals. Let's see if this will work. And these guys are just pressed on here. Now try not to mess up your plastic deals because they don't come with new plastic grommets. Now as we pull this out, look at this. See, this here is just a pin. And what happens is you get rust. This should have lube on it because this caliper, it makes it where that thing can slide back and forth a little bit with vibrations of the brakes. So what I do, I've got new caliper mounting pins. I'm gonna go ahead and lube up and slide back in here and use these old deals. And that way it's just something else to do. And then you go ahead and mount it from there. Now, that's if you want to go just for a grade B score, then you want to put new pins on there. Now, my particular situation, I have got some major issues because I went way too far and did not do my own advice and actually stop. If you'll look at my brake pad, there's literally nothing left. And you can see here, it looks like I've actually been braking with metal on metal. So what I need to do is go and take off these two bolts here, and then I can take a look at the rotor, and this rotor's just gonna slide off. So let me get another wrench and get back to you. All right, guys, we're on the back end. So we've got our, whatever it is, this brake holder. Now I'm trying to get the two caliper mounting bolts off, and these things can be booger bears. So I'm doing a little extender on my ratchet. Come on, come on. These are really damn tight. I don't know how to do this off. All right, let me go to my next plan. All right, so for stubborn bolts, you know, my first tool is just a long extension. You can see that's just it's not cutting it a day. Then I went to this guy, slide it on the end. Sometimes a closed-in ratchet can give you a little more leverage on it. Just make sure to wear some goggles. Let's see if I do it. That's not doing it. Now, next I go to a giant breaker bar. So let's slide this guy on here. Now just be careful because you're putting a lot of pressure on that thing and it may break, but it's gonna break. Come on! There she goes! That's what I'm talking about. God, dog, that is tight, 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 tight. Let's see if we can do the other one. Hey guys, just be careful if you do this. It's very effective, but this thing can break. Make sure to wear some iPro. But as you can see, life is all about leverage. So just get some more leverage on her and she will go. All right, holy cow, that was tight. Now my wrench is stuck. All right, so let me get these guys loosened up. All right, so just take off these two 18mm bolts. Again, they're gonna be extremely tight. So be careful. If you can get a little air ratchet power on there, that's the best. And the reason we're taking this off is that so we can get to the actual rotor, because this, you can't get to the rotor without taking your caliper mounting bracket off. I think I got the terms right. All right, you can see that's just a bracket. Now we can pull the rotor off, see what's really going on. Now I heard a lot of squealing going on behind this thing. And these guys, they just slide off. And let's see what we're looking for. Yeah, see, there's just a lot of wear on this rotor. And this is a drilled and slotted rotor, so I don't even know if they can turn it. So what I suggest first, try to turn them to save you some money. Turning means they go through and they shave them flat. Now the only place you can go, that's an auto store nowadays, I believe is O'Reilly's. AutoZone doesn't do it. So go to O'Reilly's, see if you can get them turned. You know, sometimes they're too bad and you just buy a new one for 30, 40 bucks. So I'm gonna go get me a new rotor and then we'll get back on it here. All right, gang, I'm back. Now, I am actually very pissed off right now. I went to O'Reilly's. Hey, guys, can you guys turn this rotor? They said, absolutely not. This thing, you see, it's drilled and slotted, which means it's got holes in it, because this is an aftermarket high-performance rotor, and the idea is having the holes through it actually cools the rotor faster, helps for higher performance braking, which is a way overkill. You don't need this on your daily driver. So, since I couldn't get those turned, I had to buy a brand new one. Made in China, only $83. So I'm a little upset. I actually, due to my laziness and actually doing this brake job sooner, I had to spend $83 on a new rotor. So be that a lesson to you. So we've got this pulled off, this rotor pulled off, and I want you to look at what's underneath it here. You'll actually see a drum brake that goes underneath the disc. That's why these back ones have this flare coming out, because there's a drum brake that hits on the inside. Now that drum brake is actually your parking brake, since that's a separate brake. So as you see, you can inspect the drums. I don't know how to do drums. I've always struggled with them, but I will go ahead and clean them with make sure to use brake cleaner. Do not use any lube. Don't use anything like carb cleaner. Get specific brake cleaner and just go around it and just clean it. You know, just get all the schmutz out of it. Again, don't use any you know, air or anything like that. And then all you do is real simple. We'll just slide the rotor over the new one, and it'll snap in there like so. You'll feel it, and then you get your caliper mounting bracket, and it just slides over here like before, just the same way you took it off. And just make sure to torque down the caliper mounting bolts, those two big guys, the 18 millimeters on the back, to whatever torque specs are for your car. Make sure to get yourself a torque wrench and do it right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing mounted up, and then we'll go back to the caliper. More fun. We're on the back side mounting up this caliper mounting bracket. Now this is a very important piece. You don't want this flying off. And I read the torque specs, it's 148 foot-pounds, which is quite a bit of torque. So that means off a foot off here is 148 pounds. So I've got my 3-foot torque wrench. So you got to bring the big boys out for this. So let's see what that looks like. No wonder this sucker was so hard to get off. You got to make sure you get a good spot on that bolt there. You can see, there you go. We hit 148. This one here, I'm going to have to find a different thing. So I just want to point out this is extremely high torque. So get yourself a real torque wrench, a half incher. You can get these on Amazon or wherever. But you will need a real torque wrench for this guy if you're going to take off this rotor. So just a heads up. All right, we're getting closer. I can almost smell victory. So next we've got our caliper mounting bracket back on with a massive amount of torque on those two. And now I'm going to slide in our new caliper slide pins. Now as you can see, I got brand new ones, and they come with a new doohickey here with Loctite on it. So it's a great option. Now make sure you saved. They don't come with a new rubber grommet from the old one. So you got to pop it off the old one, slide it on the new one. You can see it just goes right over that. And when you stall these guys, now make sure to use a little bit of lubricant. Now I like to use I went ahead and bought, the same brake lubricant, and just put it on these pins, because these pins are meant to slide back and forth in that caliper mounting bracket. So all right, so we got it somewhat lubed up, and then you just slide it in here like so, and you just make sure that little grommet is over the other piece, and there you go. And then you get your other guy, and we'll lube her up I am guilty of using too much lube at times, but better too much than too little, right? That's what she said. Couldn't help it. Couldn't help the lame joke today. And then you got that guy? All right, look at that. And so we've got new mounting hardware. Now, a lot of times when I pull these off, these little bolts tend to strip and have issues. That's why I just went ahead and bought new ones. And now we'll go ahead. All right, so now we're gonna take our new disc brake pads and slide them onto the caliper. It's easier now since we've already got them. Just make sure to put some of that grease on the back end of these guys and just rub it on. You don't need a whole lot, and make sure not to get the grease on your brake pads. I am guilty of that. And then you slide them into the little plastic slides, little metal slides, I mean. Now, a lot of your brake sets will come with new metal pieces up here. There's these little clips that slide in there. You can install new ones if you want. I just go ahead and use the old ones just because it's easier unless they're messed up or they fall out. Because the new ones, they never seem to fit just right. So then I'm going to take my other guy here and make sure to line her up. As you can see, they just slide in there like so. Hopefully, being on camera, and I can't see back there. As you can see, the top side, I had to put it in a clip. Come on, baby. A little harder when you can't see what you're doing here. What do you guys think? You guys think I can do this? Come on, gotten this far. There we go. All right, so we got ourselves a new rotor, new disc, and now, all right, so now we take our caliper and we're gonna slide them on top of our new brakes. As you can see from before, we push the piston all the way back, and then you just go ahead and slide it there, like so. And she should just slide right on. And you wanna line it up with our new pins. And with the new pins, and we take these guys, and you just put your new bolts there in the new pins. And being new, you know, the old ones get all rusty and gnarly, and they just slide in there a lot easier. And you get those new pins anywhere. Now, as far as brake parts, I went ahead, I like the Duralast brand, so I just go to AutoZone and I got the ceramic Duralast. And so I'm gonna go ahead and cinch these guys up to 31 foot-pounds. All right, gang, I want to show off my other favorite torque wrench. This one's really my favorite. This here is a Craftsman electronic quick torque wrench. As you can see, you can set the torque electronically, and then it's going to click when it hits. Just a real cool thing. You see I lost my little top. I'll go ahead and see if I can find one on Amazon. But again, these are going to be torqued to 31 foot-pounds, which is a lot less than the others, but you want to make sure you get it right. And make sure to check the torque on your specific vehicle. You see it hits right there. The torque on these is different on the front versus the back. You just want to make sure that you get the torque specs right. And so with that, we've got this torqued up. We've got new disc brakes. We've got new rotors. Now, if you want to stop right here, you're good to stop. I mean, I'd give you an A- if you want to stop right here. But if you want an A+, stick around, and I'm going to show you how to bleed the brakes. Because, you know, every now and then you do want to bleed the brakes, which means we're going to pull all the hydraulic fluid out of here and put new fluid in there just to get rid of some of that sponginess and do your maintenance. So with that, let's go ahead and hop up to the front of the truck. So now we're going to start the exciting process of bleeding the brakes. So what this is, just consider it an oil change for your brakes. So there's fluid here in your brake reservoir and on all the brake lines that go to each wheel. And this is not something that you can just unplug the lines and let it drain, because this is hydraulics and you can't get air in the lines. So what we're going to do is slowly we're going to put this full of new brake fluid, and then we're going to push the new brake fluid through the lines and do it in a certain way that does not get air in it. So the first thing we need to do to make this easier is we need to get the old brake fluid out of the reservoir. And so all we're going to do, we're going to get it out as much as I can, at least with this little pump thing here. Get it out of the reservoir. That way, it's just going to make it easier as we push the new fluid in there. That way we don't have to push as much of this old nasty fluid through here. So let's go ahead and, as you can see, I'm not going to be totally successful as usual in life. I got as much out of there as I can. You know, that's not that important. It'll just take longer to bleed them if you leave more in there. So what we're gonna do now is that we're gonna fill as much as possible with fresh brake fluid, because what we're gonna be doing as we bleed them, we're gonna keep filling fresh brake fluid into the reservoir. Now, which type of brake fluid? I got the best there's made, not Amazon, Amsoil. So this is a .3 or .4. Now in these systems, you can really use .3 or .4. .4 just has a higher boiling point, so it's made for higher performance applications. Just don't use .5. That's for like NASCARs and stuff and dragsters. So you can see, we're gonna fill this up as much as possible, and then we're gonna start bleeding the brakes, so hang on. All right, so now we're gonna start the exciting process of how to bleed the brakes. So we're on the back of our caliper with our new fancy disc brake pads installed. And on the back of the caliper, you're gonna see a little nipple here. Not a big nipple, a little nipple. And usually it's got a little rubber grommet over it. Now this is the bleeding valve. So in theory, what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna use this here. So this is it's a little brake bleeding cup. And what it is, it's got an intake tube and a little tube here. And what we're doing is that we're pushing the brake fluid out of this bleeding valve, and then we're gonna close it so no air gets in. So I'm gonna hook up this, and these are all about the same size. So you wanna hook up your little catch can to the valve, and now you go find yourself somebody, a wife, a kid, a neighbor, your brother, your sister, somebody to go sit inside the vehicle. And what you're gonna do, you're gonna say down, and they're gonna push the brake pedal down. It's gonna have fluid come out, go in here, and then you're gonna shut it. And then when they release the brake pedal, it's gonna pull back up. But if you don't shut it before they release the brake pedal, it's just gonna suck in air. So this thing is only gonna be open when they're pushing the pedal down, thus forcing fluid out. So first, make sure your reservoir has lots of fresh fluid in it, and we're gonna push it out. So let's see if this works. So I'm gonna this is a 10 millimeter, I can never say millimeter on camera, 10 millimeter. So now I'm gonna crack it open. I got my wife inside the truck, pull tight. All right, down, honey. All right, you can see that nasty fluid? If I can get my big fat hand out of the way. Up, so now she's gonna release it. All right, so the brake pedal's all the way up. I'm gonna crack it back open, down. All right, you can see that fluid starting to clear up just a little bit. Up. So now it's closed, down. Now I close it. Now you see when she comes down, there's a little bit of gnarliness coming out. That's all the rust and grime getting out of your brake system. So I'm gonna crack it, down, oh wait, down. I got mixed up. Oh, up, down. And then you get in a rhythm. Up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. All right, and you want to do that until this fluid starts looking clear with no bubbles coming out. And see, we're just about there. So you do that to all four wheels. Now, when you want to do it, you want to start on the wheel furthest from the actual brake pedal. So we're on the passenger rear. So you start on the passenger rear, do this, and then do the driver's side rear, and then do passenger front, and then driver's side front. And that is how you bleed your brakes. And just make sure to keep that reservoir full and keep checking on it as you bleed them on down. Oh, hey guys, just putting a final torque on the old lug nuts here. Well, this brake job's done. One final thing to note, when you put your wheels back on, make sure to torque them to spec. Don't need your wheels flying off coming down the road, and my viewers driving in the ditches now. But I enjoyed it. You know, every now and then I like a good brake job. It's soothing to me. Just take it one step by step. And make sure to be safe as far as how you lift it. Make sure to torque everything to spec. Get yourself a torque wrench. I'll put all the tools I used at links below that you can get your own. So if you liked it, please let me know. Leave a comment, subscribe, make fun of me, whatever you want to do. So with that, this is Mower Mike. I'm out. We'll get some more mowers back here in the shop. See you next round. All right, now if you are still watching this show, that must mean you are a real truck nut into Chevy Silverado awesome black Z71 trucks. So I'm going to do a little story time here. Now this story here is specifically for those of you out there that think you've spent too much money on your old truck. I think I can top every single one of you. So I'm going to tell you the story on this truck. So this truck is a 2001 Chevy Silverado Z71. I bought it about 10 years ago for $7,000. All right, I thought I got a great deal. She had about 140,000 miles on it. Everything worked great. The engine was running, transmission shifting, had big fat wheels on it, black. I was looking sexy, man. The women were chasing me down. Things were good. Until one day, I found a single drop of oil in my driveway. And I was like, well, we can't have this, can we? Now, at this point, most people would go underneath and, spend a few $100s and have an oil pan gasket change. I mean, that's all it was, but no, not me. I decided I need to pull the entire engine out of this sucker. And then if you're going to do that, you'd think you'd rebuild the engine that you just pulled out. No, not me. Because this motor here is out of a 2001 LM7 motor, which is a 327 LS motor. Now in 2007, in the Tahoes and the Silverados, they switched to an aluminum block LS motor, which is a different generation, totally different. But I thought to save 60 pounds off the front end of the truck, I had to get myself an aluminum block motor. So again, this was 8-9 years ago, before Facebook Marketplace. So I went on Craigslist, and for $1,000, I bought a junk aluminum motor out of a 2008 Tahoe. It was all aluminum out of a wrecked Tahoe. Helped a guy lift it into the back of my Suburban. We hauled her off. So I got back to the shop and I had this motor. I had this one out. And so at that point, I was like, well, we need to rebuild the motor. So I stripped it down and I got to just the short block. Now the short block is just where the pistons are, the cylinders, but without the actual cylinder heads. And I took that to Thompson's Performance and I talked to them. I was like, hey guys, I got this sweet motor. Now I need you guys to rebuild it. So at this point, I'm $1,000 in. And they say, absolutely. And then they tell me, we could bore this sucker out because the piston sleeves are actually thick enough where you can go from a 327 motor to a 350. So I was like, shoot, yeah, let's bore her out. So we bored it out from a 3.7 inch cylinder bore to a 3.898. So that went from a 327 to a 350 motor. All right. So that's $2,000. And I had the whole short block rebuilt. And then I had the heads done. While we're at it, hey, you guys CNC race heads for LS7s? Yeah. So I spent another $1,200 on them porting and polishing my heads, making them like race heads. So that means the air and the exhaust is flowing better in and out. So I do that. So that's $1,200. So I strap it all back together. And then I put a Lunati cam, a high lift cam. That's about, on these LS motors, that's about $700. I put a big mouth intake here, 101 millimeter. So that was about $500. I do the electric fan swap. So I do a whole kit. We buy the whole electric fan out of a newer truck. And then you do the switches. So that was another $500. All sorts of other stuff. I mean, I bought $300 spark plug wires in this thing. NASCAR rated. All new plugs, new radiator, new batteries. Everything was brand new. And of course I had to get the VR Ram Air intake over here, which is another $500. So I get all this strapped together. So by now I've got about, let's say roughly $5,000 to $6,000 into this oil leak. And so I get her started and it runs like hammered hell. You know why? Because I had to get higher flow injectors because they would not support these new cubic inches out of like a Grand Am or something. Bought them off eBay. And then I shipped my freaking computer off to California to Black Bear Performance to try to tune this monstrosity I had just built. which is a Generation 4 stuffed into a Generation 3. So I had to do all sorts of different connections to it. I mean, it was an absolute mess. I shipped my computer out 5 times to California, and it still ran like hammered hell until he was here. And then he live tuned it and realized we had the wrong injector settings and everything and got it all figured out. And boy, now, I mean, this thing absolutely was ripping. And what happens when you add about 200 horsepower into a truck? You know, we went from about 200 to 450 horsepower. This thing was a donut machine. Well, of course, the first time I rip on it, the whole transmission blows out. It's like, right? So then I have to go get a high-performance transmission rebuilt, Phoenix Transmission, Weatherford, Texas. Great place, but that was about another $4,000. And then what happens, right? So I get it all tuned up and everything's running good. Well, I hammer on it again and the whole rear end blows out, right? Because it's got these crappy 373 gears. So of course I got to go get 410 gears in the rear end. And what happens when you change a rear end gear to 373 to 410 on a 4x4? Well, you got to do the front too because it's 4-wheel drive. So you got to do the whole front thing. So now I'm in another $2,000. But, and then all sorts of other stuff happened. I mean, we're just tip of the iceberg. So now in this 21-year-old truck, which is really over 20 years old, making around 400 something horsepower, that cannot stick to the ground because all it can do is freaking donuts and burn out these big tires. I'm in this thing probably close to $20,000+, not to mention the hours and hours and hours of time that I've spent on it. But I have learned a lot. And I just wanted to vent a little bit. So when you buy this truck, I want you to realize how much time and ridiculous amount of money has gone into this truck, which it's still a great truck. But for a warning, if I give you any feedback, if you're going to rebuild a motor in a truck, stick to the same generation motor. Don't try swapping in a newer motor or doing all this stuff. Just rebuild what you got. That would have saved me, oh my gosh, so much time and money. So with that, I appreciate you guys letting me vent a little bit. Catch you next time, and we'll have some more fun here in the garage.